Okay, so this month we're going to cover field level auditing. We're going to talk a little bit about how we configure it, turning it on, viewing it, and access history. Oops, went back one, sorry. So what actually is field level auditing? If you think about it, when you think about fields and levels, you're talking field level auditing is actually focusing in on the actual forms inside of Acumatica, being your customer, your vendor, employee forms, your documents, AP transactions. So they've built in to Acumatica an auditing feature that allows you to track changes to any of these fields or specific fields. So you're able to go in and pick and choose. So obviously, like I said, it allows you to follow compliance issues and regulations such as SOX. So for the next couple minutes, we're going to be talking, I'm going to go over a little bit of access rights, how you can see certain roles and security roles. Even though that's not part of the audit, the field level audit, it's still kind of important because even though somebody has access rights to a specific form, you might still want to know who made a change to that form. Then we're going to walk through configuring it. I'm going to show you how I've got a couple set up. And we'll actually go in and view how you can see how viewing the changes of the audit trail has it built up. And then we're going to talk about access history. So with that being done, let's get right into Acumatica. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was access rights or roles. I'm not going to get deep into security because that could take us till next week talking about how security is. But I think just touching on it a little bit is going to give you a little bit better understanding of some of those things. And like I said a couple minutes ago, it's one thing to give somebody the role and let them have access to those forms. The field level auditing is going to give you a little bit more information on who's making those changes and why and what was changed. So a lot of this information can be found under the user security. Well, let's go to role level security. No, user security. I was in the right place to start with. So you can see access rights. You have access rights by role. And that is this is going to show you the ability to view the rights that each role has. So if you remember when you set up a user, you give them specific roles. Now this screen here, you actually have to come in and pick up the role. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to pick up the AP clerk. We're going to focus mostly on the AP side today. So I'm just going to select that, and it gives you the brief description. And then down here, each one of these kind of represents the workspace area on the left, so your navigation to that area. So when I talk about workspace, I'm saying when I click on this area is considered the workspace. And then down inside, you have your different elements inside there. So if I wanted to see what access the AP clerk has, maybe for payables, because that's where they work most of the time, I can click on that. And then you can see you've got just about each one of those options inside there that role can touch. And then you see these access rights. So when we look at this side here, we're going to see that delete is the highest function or the highest level. That means not only can the user go in and view it, but they also can go in and insert new records, make changes to those records, and the strongest thing ever is to delete those records. So delete is kind of all or nothing at this level. Granted, that is a role that gives them access to that form. You can limit or revoke that as you're going. What that means is it's granted. You've got that role. You can see it. You can go in and you can look at it. And then you have the view only. So view only means that you can only take a look at it. You can see it. So if somebody was signed in as an AP clerk, we don't necessarily want that person to go in and make changes to our AP preferences. So this is when you can take a look at each role. Now, when you drill inside here, so I just clicked on payables, now it expands out and it kind of mirrors this. So as you're going down, you can take a look into your bills and adjustment form. As you're getting into your bills and adjustment form, if I click on that, you have everything here. So this is an area where maybe you don't want them to touch a specific field. You can come in and you can change that. So it's either view only or it's revoked or something like that. So the access rights by role allows you to pick that role at a higher level and then go down and see exactly what that person has access to. Now, the other one I want to talk about is access rights by user. So this is where you would come in and I would pick my user. So I'm going to pick on Anna Johnson. And again, I can take a look at this. Now, at this point, I don't know what her actual role is in here, but I can click on a certain module or workspace, and I can see, well, the reason why she can't do anything in banking is because everything has been revoked. This is at the workspace level. So if I go down to payables, because I know she's an AP clerk, now you're going to see a mirror image of what her AP role was. So it's one way when you're looking in here to find out, hey, what actually can Anna see when she's inside. The next one I'm going to show you is by screen. So as you can imagine, this is the one where you're actually coming in, and again, I'll stay with payables, and I'm going to go down and see who can see or what role can see this. So if I'm looking at the role here, anybody who has, let's take this granted, administrator, they have access to that. Not set. Not set is a strange role or a strange access right in here. It allows the user to have access to everything or all those forms in a workspace until something has been revoked or granted. Meaning, once I come in and set up a security role or make some security changes on this page here or on that workspace, not set does not allow that person to see it. So it's kind of a lockdown feature. The other thing I wanted to show you, which is kind of neat, which a lot of folks don't understand, is let's say I'm having issues, I can't see a specific field or a specific form. So I come up and I say, oh, manager, I can't see, let's stick with payables. I can't see that approved bills for payment screen that you're talking about. Well, instead of going all the way through all of those and maybe going to the screen to find out, if you can just open this form up at your desk or at your station, you can go to tools and you can see access rights right from here. And it's going to take you back to that access rights by screen, but it's a little bit easier to go through and you can see who has access and maybe what role you may have to give to that user. So didn't mean to close out. So that's really a nice feature, especially if you're getting somebody new on board and they're starting to look around and they just don't have access to it. Maybe you didn't give them, or that role isn't there again. Again, when you do that, it's off of payables. And let's just go maybe to credit terms, because that's something that sometimes people don't always think about. You go to tools and you go to access rights, and it'll show you who has access to to that. So that's a nice little trick that you can use. So we're going to talk about audits, field level audit. You can set it up, but first I'm going to kind of show you how this can work. I'm going to go into payables and I'm going to pick up a vendor, and I'm just going to play with CWI. Actually, you know what? I'm going to log out as the administrator, just so that you can see a little bit of difference as we're going through. So I'm going to log in as Anna Johnson, who's my payables person. And she has the AP role. So you could think, why does she have these other workspace options? Because there are some things on her AP role that are shared. So if I go to receivables, credit terms is also a security role or a security option on the payables role. So anytime you see something like that, it means that that function is available in her main role. So I'm going to come down here, and she does not have vendors. That's interesting. So let's sign out of here and let's see why I did not give her vendors. See what happens when you do testing on stuff before, let's go roles. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to go, I know she has the AP clerk, and I'll go on the payables, and let's scroll down to vendors, and you can see that it's revoked. So if I want my AP clerk to put some vendors in and get some payments out, I'm going to give her access rights at the delete level. And if you remember, that's the highest level you can go to. So once that takes effect, I will log out as the administrator. And I'll log in as Anna. Now we shouldn't be in for any shocks when we go in here. There's our vendors, pretty easy. So I'm going to work with, today, I'm going to work with CW Installation Services. And somebody called, maybe somebody called and said, you know, can we get some different terms going? We're, you know, with everything going on, can you extend our terms? So I could come in here and I'm just going to make an easy change, and I'm going to say, okay, let's give them that term code, and I can save it. And let's see if there's anything else, maybe off of payment settings. Nope, let's just stick with term code. So I've made the term code change. Now, if I want to, I can go back in as the admin user, and I'm going to go over to my payables, and I'm going to go to vendors, and I'm going to pick up my internet. And all of a sudden I noticed, I heard that was done. Well, here I can come into tools, and I have a role that allows me to see my audit history. So when I go to audit history, it breaks it down. And if I hit my changes here, now I see, I knew that they were at 30 days before, but now I see that this has been changed. So I see that my vendor, I don't know what you mean by it. Oh, I won't see that this has been changed. Sorry about that. You can see that the terms have been changed. I can see the date and timestamp that it's happened, and I can also see the user that did that. So it tracks your changes. So how did I get there to be able to do that? That's where we're going to go back to our user security, and under preferences, there's an audit. We pick up audit, and this is where you can come in and you can pick the screen. What form or screen do I want to track this at? So I'm going to use my lookup, and I know that it is off the vendor. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to pick my vendor profile and hit select. And now on the top portion of here, this is all the different kind of tables or buckets that information is being stored in. So you can, see if I've got any, nope, all of them there. So I've got my address, I've got my BA account. I'm not going to read them all to you, don't worry about it. I also noticed that I have a button so that I can continue to move on. So right now I've got the address, meaning once I click on this, if you notice your bottom is your fields. So if I look at my address, here are all the lines, and by marking them off, Acumatica is going to start tracking any changes that are made to that specific part of the vendor. Now, it may take you a while to actually go through and find out exactly where that field is that you want, but you'll get the hang of it. So if I go to vendors, you can see down here that I've got all my vendor, all the vendor information, and someplace in here, we should see the terms ID. So by activating that, I was able to track the changes. The other part that I'll show you is under inquiries, there's an audit history. So we saw the audit trail, that was our audit trail off of the vendor and the changes that it made. Now I'm going to come into my audit history. I'm going to use my lookup, and the only thing that appears in, the only thing appears that in my audit history are screens that are set up for audit tracking. So I can see right here that I have my vendors. I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at that. And here are any vendors that have been changed. So I'm going to go down to CW, and I can see that it was modified. I can see the date, the person who did it, and what was changed. So if we look at some of these, I can look at the employee, and you can see some stuff that has been changed. I can look at a vendor, and you can see that terms have been changed for them. So this is an easy way to come in and look at the changes that have been made. Now, that's great for a master record. When I talk master records, I'm talking your GL accounts, your vendors, your customers, if you're using inventory, your items, anything like that. But you can also go in and you can track changes at a transaction level. So if I go into my payables and I go to bills and adjustments, I did a little bit of work before I got on the phone with you. I have this bill in here for Blue Line advertisements. So let's take a look at that. I have approval mapping set up. So this had to go through an approval process and everything like that. So the person who entered this, if I go in through my financial details, I see that my AP clerk, Anna, entered this. I can also go down and I can look at my approval, and I can see that Michael Andrews, who is also the admin user, he approved this document. So I've got that information here. I can come up to tools, and again, I can see my audit history. Now, if we take a look at this, you can see, again, timestamps. If I mark my changes, you can actually see everything that I entered. So this is the first snapshot of that invoice, okay? And you can see down here that the approval was created, okay? Has not been approved yet. My status at the end of this was pending. Well, then I can come up here and I can look at the second set of changes. And now I see that it was balanced. It went from pending approval to balanced. And again, here's the information for who performed that activity. I have the date, I have the user, and again, what it went from. It went from pending approval to balanced. Okay, so right down here is the approval part. So approval, pending approval to approved. Now you can also look at that, because that might be a little messy. You can also go back to your audit history. And again, this window is only going to show you what has audit set up on it. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to go to my bills and adjustments, and I'm going to open that up. And I believe that was this, oh, might not have been. It might have been this guy. Here we go. So your bill, it's the type of document and your reference number. And when I click on that, you can see the whole history of how that transaction started. So it was created by Anna Johnson, gives you the information. Now, if that would have been saved and some change was made to it, that would also be tracked. And then you can see down here that Andrews came in and there shouldn't be anything here. And then we can come down here and you see that it was finally released. I believe I'm missing a column here. ID change, maybe. But you would be able to see then that that record was actually followed through like that. So it's a nice way to be able to track the changes that have been made to a invoice or to a record. The other thing I wanted to show you quickly is something that's called access history. Now this, you might be having issues signing in, or you might want to see who's logged in and who hasn't been logging in. So again, I'm going to stick under user security. I'm going to go to access history. And from here, I've got a listing of, you can say I did some work today. You can see who's been logging in, where they logged in, and their timestamp. Or you can come in and you can just pick up a specific user. Let's look at Andrews. And I don't see anything for Andrews logging in. You can come back and let's look at Johnson. So my logins for Johnson are right here. We can see. And then if I look at the operation, I can also say, oh, when did she log out? Did the session just expire instead of actually logging out? Let me open that up. Login failed, access screen. So when she comes in, where did she actually come into, or where did she go? So this is kind of going through every screen that she has touched along the way. If I went in as admin, of course, that's going to be kind of crazy. But you can also mark a date range. So there's a lot more when you start to look at security and tracking besides just giving a user a role. Again, once they have that role, they can still make some changes and, to certain forms, and it's nice to be able to have that audit trail for those. So again, today we looked at access rights by role, which showed you what access each role has. We looked at it by user, so you could pull up a specific user. We also looked at it by screen. And by screen is where I also came in and I showed you using tools. You can go to access rights and it'll take you to the screen and you'd be able to find out exactly what roles are there and how they set. Audit, this is where you would want to come in and pick up a new audit trail. So let's say we wanted to do the same thing for customers. I could come in, and I don't think I have one for customers, but if I do, we'll just call this customer 2. Let's add screen name. You got to search by it. Customer. So maybe I just want to come in and I want to see if anybody makes changes to my customer classes. You can see that the tables are here. So if I look at that, I want any changes that are made down here. You can unmark any of these that you don't care to track. Make sure you mark it active and save it. Oh, and give it a description for yourself. So I might go ICS, customer track, customer class track. And go ahead and save it. Now the show fields, it shows you all the fields this way, or it will only show you the interface fields, the user interface fields that the user sees. So whatever you're more comfortable with using, you can use. Do we have any questions?
One of the things that I was looking at is where you were giving the access rights to each role. that was where, and I wasn't sure how to set up security. I had gone through to some of my users, and I changed their roles, and all of a sudden they said they couldn't see anything on their screen. So like their menu sets when they went into payables. So I just was looking at where you give the granted gives access to the form, which would be what they see on the screen, like if they were going into payables. Is that correct?
Okay, so I'll read the exact thing because it's confusing. So granted allows the role access to all the forms in the workspace. However, you can limit or revoke access to particular forms within the workspace for that role. So when you look at by, did you say you went in by role?
Yeah, I went in by role.
Okay, so let's pick, let's just look at this AP viewer. That should be pretty simple to look at. If I look at banking, it's not set, they shouldn't see anything. The only thing they should be able to see here is granted. If we go down to payables, it's granted, meaning that they can see that. They're able to, for some reason, they're able to come in and insert for history. Again, test environment, probably wouldn't want to do that. But everywhere else you can see view only. So they have access to that workspace, but they're only seeing that form.
Okay.
Okay, and then once you get into, let's get out of viewer. No, let's stay in viewer. Once you get into the nitty-gritty part, you can come down and say, okay, well, how about, what do they see for bills and adjustments? That's inherited from the bigger picture, which is probably granted. But you can get down to, let's say you have somebody new in AP and you don't want them to be able to release a document, to release documents. Maybe you or Anna need to review them first. You can actually go down another level, and you should be able to see at, is it at this level or the other level? We can actually take it down so that they don't see the actions. So we can get, you can get pretty complex when you start looking at this. And what I mean by actions is if you had somebody new coming in and you did not want them to be able to come in and hit release, we could actually remove that or block them through security for that for you.
Okay.
Okay, so if you think of security as the whole, you can see how it filters down, kind of works with your field level security, but it's just a nice tracking purpose. Do you have any other questions?
No, the other one that I had was looking at, because I had looked at audit history, I didn't know that I could actually specify what I could see in the audit history, so that's nice.
Yeah. Yep. And like I said, I have another vendor that I usually play around with when I'm setting that up, and that's my go-to vendor. And once you get down into the audit history for him, it's a little bit deeper. But don't forget you've got these buttons over here so that you can expand all. So you'd be able to come in and, see the changes that have been made along the way, along with who made them. There's not an area where you can actually print this part out. You would probably have to print it through your web browser, and that might not look too pretty. But off of the audit history, if you were to bring something up, you can export this part out to Excel. So you'd be able to see it. Okay. And if you have any questions on setting it up, you can always, give us a call, or don't forget you've got your help option over here too.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop recording. So thank you. And I'm not sure what we have on schedule.